Hi, good morning and happy Earth Day, and welcome to the Flood Innovation Center's very first ever live webinar. My name is Hiatt Jackson. And I am one of the technology research managers on this ERDF funded project. We're having a webinar today in lieu of the workshop that we had originally intended to hold for obvious reasons, because we're all on lockdown. However, we still want to be ready when business resumes to go forward with some projects and get into that delivery phase of our program. So today's webinar, just an overview of what we're going to do. We're going to begin by talking about the knowledge exchange framework, what that is and how the Flood Innovation Center fits into that. I'll give you an overview of the Flood Innovation Services and why the Flood Innovation Center was formed. Then we're going to go into some examples of how we can actually deliver that service. And we'll talk a little bit about eligibility and getting involved with the Flood Innovation Center. We'll follow it all up with a Q&A session. The panel will also be standing by throughout the presentation to answer any questions. So if you want to ask questions while I'm talking, please feel free to do so. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's what you'll use for any questions that you have. And I will introduce you to that panel towards the end of the presentation. So mainly, I'm going to be telling you about how the Flood Innovation Center is going to shape the future of flood innovation through collaboration and opening up some of those opportunities for the small and medium-sized enterprises to get into this flood resilience market. So the knowledge exchange framework, I'm going to show you a video that's been prepared by the University of Hull to explain that. But just in general terms, it's a program that it has been put together to encourage the exchange of information between universities and the wider public. And it encourages academics to share their academic outputs with businesses to help businesses in their local areas and beyond improve the way they work. But it also is an exchange, so the businesses help to inform that research and the direction that it takes. So if you watch this video, you'll have a little bit more of an idea of how local businesses can get involved with this exceptional institution.
Effective knowledge exchange has never been more important to UK universities. But what is knowledge exchange?
For me, knowledge exchange is really about sharing our information with anybody who sits outside of that traditional academic sector. So that might be decision makers, local business people, international businesses, schools, colleges, any other groups, informal members of the public that might be interested in the sort of thing we do.
So for me, knowledge exchange is using academic research in combination with practitioner experience. So it's a two-way street. We learn from each other. So while I've got the insight that I've got from all the research, the academic research I've done looking at the PhD and the postdoctoral research afterwards, what works in theory won't necessarily work in practice. So for me, it's really important to work with practitioners to be able to understand how and what can be implemented to increase impact on the ground. I'm able to add value to that with my academic research, but a lot of my academic research has been influenced by those practitioners' knowledge.
We are working with SMEs to help them innovate. The Flood Resilience Innovation Centre is one example where we're working with regional SMEs. It's funded by the European Structural Investment Fund, and we are using our expertise to help them innovate, to come up with new solutions to tackle flood resilience, which is really important in this region. Another example is the Aura Innovation Centre, where again we're working with regional SMEs to help them come up with solutions that will help tackle a changing climate and move towards a zero carbon economy.
Knowledge exchange is core university business. It's why we do what we do. It can be informed by our research, but it can also be informed by our teaching and by our work with communities and external partners. Knowledge exchange is about using what the university does to make life better, to improve economies, to improve society, and to improve health and well-being.
Okay, as you probably noticed from that video, it is just, it's a bit edited. It's a clip actually from a longer video that the University of Hull has posted to their YouTube channel. So if you want to see the full video, learn a little bit more about how the knowledge exchange framework works, you are welcome to go to the university YouTube channel and find that and watch the whole thing. So led by this desire to sort of increase knowledge exchange, and also by the increasing global threat of catastrophic flooding due to climate change, the university decided to form the Flood Innovation Center, which is an ERDF-funded project to support small to medium-sized enterprises in taking advantage of that exceptional talent and world-class facilities that they have at the University of Hull. So our aims are to grow this innovation ecosystem in the Humber region around flood resilience, and to help accelerate the development of commercially attractive products and make the Humber region sort of a global hub for innovation around flood resilience. So we've got a few sectors listed here. These are our main primary target sectors, but we're not limited to these sectors. So if you're working outside of one of these sectors, please feel free to get in touch anyway, because it's very likely that we can support you. It's a very broad support mandate, so we might be able to support you even if you don't sit in one of these sectors. So the key aspects of our offer are going to sort of lead towards development of permanent collaboration links in the area between SMEs, the University of Hull, and other academic institutions, the large companies that we partner with, and the local authorities as well. And our goal is to have a positive impact on SME growth as it relates to the flood resilience market. So we're doing this by providing completely free support to SMEs. It's fully funded and it costs the SME nothing and can include up to £20,000 worth of collaborative support. So one of the ways in which we are doing this is through the use of our dedicated research and testing facilities. Through these facilities, we have some of them are listed here. These are the ones that may or may not, well, that they probably do exist in our Flood Innovation Center. The chemical analysis one is one of our partners, and we have quite a few partners that we can work with that extend our capabilities for testing and analysis and prototyping and design. One of those partners, the Aura Innovation Center, they were mentioned in the video, and you may have heard of them recently in the news because they've been working with the University of Hull to do some 3D printing for the NHS face guards. But they just expand our capabilities for research, testing, prototyping, fabrication, and design. So our service offer extends from innovations that are completely novel to the world, to the global market, that haven't been seen before. They're basically new inventions, to things that might just be new, a new way of operating or a new product being used by an SME. It also extends from innovations that are in the very infancy, so that maybe they're just some drawings or some an idea that has been developed within an SME, all the way up to products and services that are nearly ready for commercialization, but maybe just need sort of final testing or modification before they are put out to the market. So as I said, I'm going to give you some examples of how we could actually help. So if you're still wondering how you could get involved, hopefully this will give you some insight as to what we actually do and how flexible and broad-ranging our support actually is. So my first example comes from the ICT sector and is around the development of simulation software. So let's say we've got a software company that is developing a software model of urban flooding scenarios. However, they need to access some real-time data from some of the river environments. This is when the Flood Innovation Center would facilitate the collaboration between the SME and an academic who might be doing research around drainage and have links to a drainage board who has a sensor network on some of these river environments. We could facilitate the access for that company of that data help them to interpret it and understand it, and help to convert it for use in their software platform. So let's say that the drainage board that is installing the sensor network has hired a company to do that installation work, and they've had an idea about some data that they would like to acquire using sensors, or perhaps a way to improve the sensors that are already there. But they don't have the resources or the expertise to go forward with the design of a sensor. This is when we might be able to put in our design and prototyping of electronic circuit boards capabilities to help them sort of move that idea forward. And then maybe we'll put them in touch with a consultant that could help see that through the commercialization process. So my next example comes from the manufacturing industry and is around ideas to actually physically stop floodwaters. There's a big market right now for property level protection, mainly because of the increase in catastrophic flooding, but also because there's a call in the UK for an increase in housing, and that translates to large developments that sometimes end up on land that is not particularly ideal for housing developments and is maybe a bit flood prone. So this has led to an increase in the property level protection market. So it's a good market actually to get into right now. So let's say that a plastics company has decided to enter this market and they've designed a flood resistant door or a flood resilient door. However, because they're a plastics company, they might not have the means to test this door, to performance test it. So this is when we might be able to use our hydro testing, Flume Laboratories, or the environmental simulator. And we could test the door under the stress and strain of moving water, perhaps giving them a 3D profile of the stress monitoring to help them go forward with kite mark certification so they can commercialize that product. The next example comes from the service sector. So we can help with business interventions as well as product development interventions. So for example, market analysis, training support, quality, risk assessment, quality assurance, that sort of thing. So let's say that we've got a commercial cleaning company who would like to develop a service where they do post-flood cleaning of commercial properties, but they aren't really sure about what the risk of contamination from the floodwaters is to their employees, and they'd like to keep their employees safe, so they want to do a full risk assessment. In this case, we could facilitate a collaboration with a hazmat training provider, possibly a risk assessment consultant might get involved, or we could pass them on to someone at the university who has experience in chemical analysis of urban runoff to help them build that full risk assessment outlook, and then make their product safer for their employees and more commercially attractive to potential customers. So my next example is something that I think we will be doing quite a lot of in the coming years, and that is supporting collaboration through suites of workshops. These will be various different types of workshops. Some of them might be sector related, where we invite members of the community from different sectors and discuss maybe specific technologies that would apply to that sector for flood resilience. Or it might be more technology related, where we have a variety of sectors attending and we focus on one specific technology and how that could help them. One that we'll be doing in the very near future, so please look out for it. Dr. Elena Kuvshinova is going to be doing one on innovation and how that relates to the Flood Innovation Center. One that we'll be doing also quite soon, possibly, is one around the sustainable drainage systems at the university. To something like this, we might invite members from the construction industry, civil engineers, geotechnical engineers, landscape architects, and then we would definitely make sure we had some key players there as well to open up those collaboration opportunities. People from the University Estates Department, academics with specialism in drainage, sustainable drainage systems, products representatives, the local representatives from the local authorities, and that would hopefully open up these future lasting collaborative opportunities for SMEs and help them maybe get get involved in some of the more the large infrastructure projects that are going on around drainage. So my final example is likely going to be most attractive to the smaller businesses. Let's see, we've got a business that is developing a high pressure portable flood pump. But what they found in the development process is that it is prohibitively expensive, and it is too expensive to be commercially viable in the manufacturing process. So in this case, we could do a business intervention and perhaps get them going on working with someone from the business school to explore some opportunities in the supply chain. We could work with our large business partners to explore opportunities in their supply chains as well. An alternative route we might take with that is to link them with someone in the engineering department from the university, and we can all work together on a redesign that makes that product more commercially viable. So I hope that these 6 examples have given you some sort of insight into the breadth of our remit. We've got a very broad range of projects that we can service. But it's always best to get in touch, because you may not think you fit into this picture yet, but it may very well be that you do. So it's really easy to get in touch and get that ball rolling. Which leads me to this is the back end team, part of our team. You may or may not work directly with these people, but if you do fill out one of our eligibility forms, our initial eligibility forms, that you'll do that with Lizzie, and she will determine that initial eligibility. Once that initial eligibility is determined, it'll move sort of more into Alex's workload, and she'll make sure that we remain compliant with our funder, ERDF, and she'll also make sure that the process runs very smoothly. We have 2 researchers that are working on the project as well, and they may or may not, as I said, be directly working on a particular project. However, if the project has some sort of public engagement or communication of climate change and flood risk, or requires sort of qualitative analysis, then you're likely to have Kate working on the back end to support that project. If your project is more around, requires a bit of data science, or is around development of ICT-based intelligence systems for flood resilience, then a VACE would be supporting on the back end of that one. This is the more forward-facing part of our team, and it's also your panel today. Pip Betts is our project manager. She's sort of overseeing the whole project, making sure that it runs smoothly, making sure that we are compliant with our funder, working with Alex on that. And she'll be attending quite a few of the events that we do. She may or may not be working directly on any of the projects that we take on. Chun, myself, and Elena, we are the technology research managers. I'll come back to what we do in a minute. Liz Johnson is our business development manager. She will be involved early on in the project, helping to sort of get the businesses signed up properly and complying with our funder, but also she'll be doing some of that initial scoping and determining what resources and what people will be involved on the project. So once that bit is done, then the project will be assigned a technology research manager to work on that project. And it will depend which technology research manager the project gets will depend on the nature of the project, because we all have different sort of specialisms. Chun is an electronics engineer with specialist areas in hyperspectral imaging, remote sensing using drones, and he's also really good at 3D printing. So if you require a prototype, it's likely you'll be working with Chun. If your project needs hydrology or geology expertise, you'll probably be working with me, possibly doing some remote sensing using geophysical techniques or application of sustainable drainage systems. Elena is our chemical engineer, but she also has a lot of experience with innovation management and economics. So if it's a business intervention, then you might be working with Elena. So I'm going to finish off today by letting you hear from Dan Parsons, who is the director of the Energy and Environment Institute, which is leading this project. And he's speaking here at the bondholders meeting in 2018. And he's going to explain why it is so important to grow and innovate around flood resilience.
Now, one of the biggest global challenge we face is climate change and the associated impacts that will have on the way in which we live as humanity on Earth. But also talk about the solutions that we in Hull and the Humber really can drive and lead on internationally as we move forward into what's been called a zero carbon world. We're polluting that thin veneer, that atmosphere that sustains life on Earth, and it's causing really big problems, because it's warming the Earth. It's called global warming, but it should really be called global heating. And it's strange because we are warming up the Earth really quickly and the weather patterns are changing. So these big storms are getting bigger and they're getting more frequent, and also their geographical reach is spreading too. Catastrophes and natural hazards happening more frequently and are getting bigger and affecting more and more populations. And of course, that's having an impact here at home too. So in the Humber estuary, along the east coastal margin, big changes are happening because of storminess, increase in storminess, and also sea level rise. We need to address this. Living with water, we will flood again, but how do we become more resilient? How do we ensure that our recovery is really rapid? And how do we ensure that we're prepared as a society for this into the future?
Okay, so it is obviously a really big threat at the minute, this catastrophic flooding. However, for us, it's a growth opportunity as well. And we would like to use this opportunity to help grow the Humber region's ability to sort of provide innovative flood resilience solutions. And that is our remit in a nutshell. Right, so hopefully you're feeling very inspired and you would like to know how to get involved. So you can start by using the details on the screen and contacting Liz, our business development manager, and giving her some details about how you'd like to get involved. And then she will make sure that you get one of our eligibility forms. Now, eligibility in general terms means that you are an SME and that you are operating in the Humber region or a transition region. If you're unsure whether or not you fall into those categories, by all means, please fill out the registration form anyway. It doesn't take long. It can be done over email. And even if we find that you're not eligible for our services, we can keep you on file, keep your contact details on file for future collaborative opportunities around flood resilience. You could maybe help us support on one of our projects in the future. So that brings us to the Q&A. I'm going to start by reading out any questions that have been asked during while I've been presenting, and I'll read the answers out to those as well. And then we'll move into any new questions. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you like. There's no limit on the amount of questions that you can ask. Okay, so we'll start with the answered questions. First one is from Philip. Thank you for your question. I understand that there are funding related reasons for concentrating on the Hull Humber area, but could there be innovations in companies not in the region, but very pertinent to supporting the project aim? It seems strange not to benefit from this work capability. Will you consider people, companies outside of the Humber? I'm just seeing if there are any answers here. Yes, okay, so Elena has said we can work with companies from transitional regions, for example, South Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. And Pip has said, hi Philip, we have some restrictions under our funding regulations as to where we can provide fully funded delivery. However, we can look at other opportunities for how the university may be able to support businesses outside of these areas. Suggest that you register anyway, and we can pick up on discussions that way, details on the way. So that is an excellent question, and as I said before, it's always best to just check, fill out the eligibility form, and it might be that you are eligible. Anthony Harford has said, do you fund the costs of external consultants? Another good question, thank you. Elena has said, yes, there is an opportunity to fund external support and consultants. And Pip has said, hi Anthony, we look first to service with core funded tech managers, then from wider academic pool at the University of Hull. If we can't service the innovation by that means, then yes, we have some budget to pay for external consultancy. Okay, so I'm going to move now. Thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to move now to the open questions. And there's one here from Elena Bolton, and she says, can you be an individual applying? So I'm going to pass that one on to, I'll pass that one on to Pip. So I'm going to unmute Pip. Pip, would you mind answering that question, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, everybody. Shall I, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me, that's
Sorry,
fine.
I should have said that.
No problem. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. Thanks, Hiatt. You've just done an amazing job on taking everybody through what the Flood Innovation Centre is and can do. As we discussed, I'm the project manager. Thanks for your first question. Can an individual apply? This initiative is aimed at SMEs, so small, medium enterprises. So if as a individual you are meaning a sole trader, then yes, absolutely, obviously that would constitute a micro enterprise. But if you are a sole trader operating with an idea and providing you fulfill all of the kind of due diligence questions that we've got, and you're registered with Companies House, etc., then yes, we could certainly progress an application for you. But as with everything, fill in the registration form and we can take you through what we need from you in terms of eligibility. But thanks, Alana, great question.
Thank you very much, Pip. And Nick Arnold asks, having filled out the eligibility form, when do we find out if we are eligible and under what requirements? Liz, would you mind taking that one, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, Nick.
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good, thanks. Hi, Nick, thanks for that question. It's all part of the initial part of the eligibility process. You've completed, thanks for actually engaging with the project. I can see there's potential there with your inquiry. It's about engaging with completing the first part of the application process, going through eligibility checks, and then into the second part. And I believe that your application at the moment is in part B. So I will be speaking to you in the next couple of days with an update, if that's all right, or I can possibly speak to you this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Liz. Is there any other questions that anybody would like to ask? You're welcome to raise your hand as well if you'd like to ask your question live. Okay, we've got a question from Luke Clayton. Thank you for your question. We have been approached by a company that creates flood simulation. They are potentially looking to work with us to build them this software. As we are a software development design agency, we are also to leverage our VR AR capability. Would it be worth all parties getting the flood innovation involved? Chun, do you want to take that one? I've unmuted you.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, hello. You take that question, please.
Yes. Oh, hi, Luke. Yes, I think that's a really good question. So you've been approached by a company who creates flood simulation, potentially looking to us. So would the company be working with the university, or would your company be working with us together to help develop the software and the product? But I think either case, get in touch with us, sign up, get the form, and then we will then be able to look at it closer, because each support package is actually bespoke design to suit your requirements. So absolutely, we can absolutely work with either both of you or both of them together. So yes, so I think the best thing to do is to get in touch, and then we'll be able to look at it a lot closer and be able to come up with a bespoke support plan once we've gone through all the eligibility and requirements checks. Hopefully this has actually answered some of your questions, but if not, just keep asking and I'll do my very best to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chun. And thank you, Luke. You've expanded saying you were thinking of a collaboration between all parties, and collaboration is definitely what we do. It's what we're about, and the more collaborative the project, the better from our perspective. Did anybody else want to add anything to that answer? Nope. Okay.
Shall I come in?
Yes, go ahead, Pip.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it was just to say, yeah, absolutely, Luke. We're not limited to working with one SME in terms of an innovation. It can be multiple SMEs working together to develop a product. So yes, by all means, we'd register you all. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Stephen Jacobs. If outside the eligibility area, can we get help perhaps by joint funding? For example, can the SME contribute to benefit from your facilities And if so, what proportion of the cost could be shared? Oh, that's a very good question. I think that's probably going to have to go to you, Pip.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for your question. This is probably a conversation that we need to take offline, but we would certainly be looking at ways that, you know, as we've said, that it's funding constraints, unfortunately, that limit the kind of eligibility in terms of geographic area. It's the way that the European funding is given out and from where we get our funding. I won't go into that, but absolutely, if you're getting in contact and we have a conversation, we'll look at other ways that we can service it. We won't be able to fully fund it potentially that way, but we can have discussions about how we could get into it. In terms of the proportion, I couldn't look at discussing that or knowing that, but let's have a chat offline and we'll pick that up. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's always worth getting in touch. I think that's the main point as well. So do please get in touch about that one. Thank you very much for your question. Next question is Louise Smith. How does the Flood Innovation Centre work with the Aura Innovation Centre? And that sounds like a really good question for Elena. If you are unmuted, I'll unmute you there. Elena, would you mind answering that, please?
Aura Spark, sorry, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Aura, Spark and Flood Innovation Centre are the family of innovative supporting organizations of the Hull University. So we're in deep collaboration, and the main purpose of our collaboration is the benefit of SMEs and providing the support for increasing flood resilience. As for our innovation center in particular, we can collaborate with using their facilities. Either then they can address us to work with our facilities, and of course, if we need the support of their experts, so we need their expertise, we can ask for the idea sharing or methodology sharing. So yes, we are on very close collaboration, and there's always the flows of information between all three our centers. If I ask, are there any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Yep, are there any more questions? That's the last one I have on here. I'll give it a minute in case anyone's typing. I'll just add a little bit to Elena's, is that in addition to the Aura Innovation Facilities, we have access, I don't know if I made it clear earlier, we have access to a lot of the facilities at the University of Hull as well, and the EEI, as well as our own extensive laboratory facilities. Okay, I think that is all the questions we've got for now. But if you have further questions later on, do feel free to get in touch, please. So thank you very much for coming today. At the end, when we end this webinar.
Sorry, Hiatt, there's another question just popped up from Adam.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, I shall answer that. Let me just find my Q&A window there. Oh, I've got a couple. Right, okay. Thank you, Jill. Adam Barkworth has said, hi, Hiatt. You ran through some useful examples of the types of projects you could work on without breaching any NDAs, privacy agreements. Can you tell us what you're actually working on, or were these a fair summary? That's an excellent question, Adam. I don't think I dare answer it. There is obviously some privacy stuff that we need to be mindful of, but sorry, can you give us an overview of those, Pip, please?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thanks for the question, Adam. So as you may well be aware, Flick's at its very early stage, sort of infancy stage of delivery. So we're literally in a kind of an early period of business development, kind of putting out the awareness of what the Flood Innovation Project is and what we can do, hence the webinar today. So we're actually only in really sort of initial conversations with the kind of handful of companies that we've got. So in terms of what we're actually working on, it's not a great deal as yet, because we're just having those, as I say, those early initial diagnostic questions. So watch this space.
Thank you, Pip. Right, James Dalrymple asks, would the university get involved with testing a product manufactured outside of the region, but which would benefit the region in terms of flood resilience if installed there? I do think I know what you're talking about there, James. And I think that would be sort of a more collaborative piece of work. Elena, would you mind answering that question for us, please?
Thank you for your question, James. First of all, yes, there are restrictions of funding, but we can work not only with the Humber region, as we told before, we can work with any transitional areas of the UK. Doesn't matter how far they are. And another question, if, for example, that's always better to check. So the first step is always check the eligibility. And as Chun mentioned, it's always the bespoke development of each particular project. So you can't be sure that you are eligible or not before we start to work with you. And the second step is, I mentioned that we work with a lot of higher education institutes in the UK and in the Hull University. So some of our innovation companies do not have these restrictions. So we always can refer you. So that again, you have to, I would advise you to come to meet to us and we can discuss the further collaboration with us or with other companies, now with other innovation support organizations, and even refer you to the other outside the Hull University. And the third, there is a possibility of further development of our supporting program. And even, for example, I think it's very unlikely that you come to us and we'll tell you, yeah, we can't help you now. But if that's the case, there is always the further development of a program. And I think in the future, we can support any other companies which come not only for transitional areas, but if there are a lot of transitional areas in the UK, it's better always to check with us. So please come and have a talk with our team, and we will discuss all project specs with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Elena. Yeah, I totally agree with what she's just said. The next question, thank you for your question, James. The next question is from Stephen Jacobs. Thank you for your question. It's what happens post-Brexit since funding is from the EU? Will it dry up in 2021 or sometime later? That is a very good question. Liz, would you mind answering that for us, please?
All right, okay, that's a good question. Thanks, Steve. Hi, I think I can only partly answer this because I am not, EU funding is not a specialist area of mine. So I will try and answer it where I can. Post-Brexit, yes, since funding from the EU, I'm not quite sure actually what is going to happen with the funding. Our particular project has got funding up to December 2021. So all I can say is if you've got an innovation, make sure that you return an inquiry form to us as soon as possible. Perhaps Pip, could I bring Pip in and see if she could maybe answer some of this question to do with the funding?
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for your question, Steve. Thanks for mentioning the B word. Yes, so there have been sort of numerous guarantees pre and post Brexit that from UK Treasury that the European funding budget will be honoured. I mean, it's all bound up in the kind of exit deal, but there are guarantees in place that should something go catastrophically wrong with the kind of divorce agreement, then all funding that is contracted will be underwritten and honoured by UK Treasury. So please don't think that there's a risk, obviously, to you getting involved and that the rug's going to get pulled out halfway through, because any project like ours that's been contracted, we have had that guarantee that we will get the funding until the end of our delivery. So don't let it put you off.
Thank you, Pip. Thank you for your question, Stephen. If there's no more questions, feel free to keep asking. Someone will tell me if the question pops up. So again, thank you very much for coming today. I hope that you've learned a lot about what our service entails, and I hope that you're eager to get involved at this point. The contact details for Liz Johnson are at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So please do make a note of those, but you don't need to worry too much about it if you don't get them down, because we will send you a follow-up email with the YouTube address for this particular video that we've recorded. You'll also be receiving at the end of this webinar a pop-up evaluation form. We would really, really appreciate your feedback. We'd like to know what you thought of the webinar and what you think of getting involved with the Flood Innovation Centre. And finally, I would like to say that this has been delivered as part of a suite of online events that the university has put on today in celebration of Earth Day. So if you'd like to see any more of those events, see what else is available, then you can head over to their Twitter page or their LinkedIn page. The Twitter is at Uni of Hull, and you can get a list of what the rest of the events for celebration of Earth Day are. So I will leave you with saying Happy Earth Day, and I hope you've enjoyed the webinar.
One more question.
Oh,
sorry, there's one more question.
That's fine. Keep them coming. I'm not going to go through the whole goodbye thing again, though. All right, this question comes from John McGurk, and it says, over the past few years, flood protection has been replaced by flood resilience. That's an excellent point. Where does flood protection fit in shaping the future of flood innovation? Oh, Chun, I think that's one for you.
Yeah, personally, well, thank you for the question, John. Personally, I think it works both ways. So for me, flood protection is the short term. So when a flood happens, this is how you stop it from causing more damage. Whereas resilience is more in the long term. So actually, both of them are not in conflict. You can actually work on both of them. We can actually work on both of them together under the long-term solution, resilience. So we would like to increase flood resilience within the region, within areas that are actually in danger of having floods, flash floods, that we've seen over the last few months. But yes, short-term is for protection, long-term is for resilience. We want to work on them both together. So please come and talk to us. We love to be able to help. So please get in touch. I hope this answers your questions. If not, just keep answering, but keep asking and we'll do our best. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chun. And we are working with Living with Water, and I think that is sort of a good description of what resilience means. It's about the fact that, as Dan Parsons said, floods are going to happen, and they are going to happen more and more. So we need to learn to live with water, and that's what resilience is about, I think, for the long term, like Chun was saying. And thank you for your question. Louise Smith, do your projects involve working with the communities at risk then? Oh, that's a good question. Pip, can you answer that for us, please?
Hi, yeah, no problem. Thanks, Louise, for another good question. So it's never a straightforward answer, but in a nutshell, yes, we can. Certainly on the research side, so obviously on the slides you saw colleagues Avais and Kate Smith. Kate is particularly interested at some of the kind of community resilience work and working with some of the communities in the area who are at risk. So that'll be a kind of a research angle of some of the work we do. Obviously, because of the funding, we are constrained to working with organisations, but we're not. But I think, as we alluded to, that's not limited to kind of profit-making organisations. We can certainly look at supporting voluntary and community sector organisations and social enterprises and charities. So I've been doing some work with the National Flood Forum to try and make contact with, for example, flood action groups, and providing those flood action groups are kind of formally constituted and classed as voluntary community sector organisations, we could certainly work with them about developing their resilience at a community level. So, So that's definitely an area that we're interested to explore. So thanks for a great question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise, and thanks, Pip. Right, are there any more questions? Okay, thank you very much for attending today. And if you do have any further questions, do please get in touch. And happy Earth Day. Have a really good rest of your day. Thank you very much.